Today we're covering an ice caving incident where one small gear choice turned a routine descent into a silent death. He never fell into the crevice, the rope held him, and that's what killed him. Because in ice caves, the most dangerous mistakes don't look dramatic, they look professional, right up until they aren't. And for several minutes, the people above him thought they were solving the problem, while his gear tightened in the dark. This is a reconstruction based on documented failure points in cold environment guiding. No gore, no exaggeration, just the kind of chain reaction that happens when almost correct gear meets a place that doesn't forgive it. Here's how it started. The cave was in Antarctica, an ice tunnel carved by meltwater and pressure, far from anything you'd call easy. Not a rock cave with some frost on the walls, but a hollow inside a glacier. Ice above, ice below, ice on every side. The tour company advertised it as a guided exploration. Blue chambers, frozen walls, the kind of place people take photos of and never stop talking about. A small group signed up, mixed experience, mostly rookies, tourists who'd hiked before, maybe done a basic glacier walk, but never something like this. 2 guides led them in. The lead guide, Eric Lundstrom, he was someone who had done this 100 times. Calm voice, minimal words, all routine. And the second guide, Maya Chen, was the one who noticed details, clips, straps, the tiny mistakes people make when they're cold and excited. One tourist stood out, not because he was reckless, but because he was focused. Daniel Romer, mid-30s, German, photographer, quiet, patient, the type to pause, not to show off, but to get the shot. That matters later, because this story doesn't start with someone being stupid. It starts with a system that looks safe. Before anyone stepped inside, Eric ran a quick gear check. Harness on, carabiners locked, headlamps tested, ropes clipped. Then came the crampons, spikes strapped to boots for traction on ice. Most people assume crampons are crampons, but there's a difference between crampons meant for wide, consistent glacier slopes and traction meant for tight, uneven ice caves. Several tourists were handed 12-point mountaineering crampons, aggressive teeth, long front points, the kind you see on serious alpine climbs. They looked professional, they looked reassuring, but Maya noticed one strap sitting crooked, not seated properly. She corrected it. Eric made a small adjustment on another pair and said something that sounded casual, almost comforting. These aren't ideal, he told the group, but they'll be fine here. No one challenged him. Why would they? You don't argue with the person responsible for your survival. They clipped into a fixed safety line, ice screws drilled into the walls at intervals, a rope running through them like a handrail, and entered the first chamber. And it was stunning. A wide cathedral of blue ice, walls glowing like they were lit from inside, frozen curtains, smooth surfaces with trapped air bubbles like stars in glass. The cave didn't feel dangerous, it felt sacred. And that's the trap, because beauty makes people relax, and relaxed people stop noticing warning signs. They moved deeper, the ceiling lowered gradually, the floor sloped down like a ramp, and the walls tightened into a corridor. The ice underfoot changed too. The first chamber had been solid and smooth, but now the ice was layered, brittle in places, like it had been built in sheets. A clue, if you knew what it meant. Sometimes in glacier caves, meltwater runs behind an outer wall and hollows pockets. Then the temperature drops again, and the water refreezes, leaving a thin skin over empty space. You can't always see it, but you can sometimes hear it. A dull sound under a boot, not a sharp crack, but a muted thunk, like stepping on a hollow door. One tourist slipped, just a small skid, nothing dramatic. A quick laugh followed, the kind of laugh people do when they're embarrassed and cold. Maya studied them by the harness. That's why we stay clipped, she said, and the sentence did what it always does. It made everyone feel safer, without actually making them safer. They kept going. The corridor narrowed again, and the cave began to feel like it was choosing a smaller shape around them. Eventually, they reached a vertical transition, an opening dropping into a lower chamber. Not a massive abyss, but a short descent where everyone would need to clip in, step down carefully, and keep their weight controlled. Eric set a rope anchor above the drop. He checked the ice screw placement, tested tension, then demonstrated the movement. Clip, shift weight, step down, controlled descent. One by one, the tourists went, slow, careful, learning the technique as they did it. Daniel waited at the top, last in line, and from his angle, the view was perfect. The chamber above was the bluest section they'd seen so far. The walls curved like frozen waves. A waterfall hung mid-flow, turned to glass. Daniel raised his camera. Just one shot, just a few seconds. And that's where the gear problem stops being theoretical. Because when Daniel repositioned his stance, his crampon front point didn't bite. It caught. The long front point snagged on layered ice like a nail catching the edge of plywood. His foot stopped, but his body kept moving, and he didn't fall straight down. He fell backward and sideways. The silent kind of slip that steals your voice before you can use it. The rope did what it was designed to do. It took his weight. It arrested the fall. It prevented him from dropping into the lower chamber. For half a second, it looked like everything worked. But as Daniel fell sideways, his helmet swung close to the wall, and the back of his helmet, an older style with a protruding rear adjustment cradle, hooked onto an ice screw. For a brief moment, the helmet caught, while Daniel's body dropped. The force compressed his neck. The strap bit under his chin. His head jerked hard, and Daniel went limp. No scream, no thrashing, no fight. Just slack weight hanging below the lip. From above, that looks like a solved problem. The rope is tight. The anchor is solid. The person is suspended, not falling. Someone said it out loud because it's what everyone wanted to believe. He's hanging, a tourist muttered. He's fine. But ropes can do two things. They can stop you from dying, or they can keep you stuck in the exact position that kills you. Eric leaned over the edge and called down, "Daniel." No response. Cold air eats sound, and ice walls block sight lines. Daniel's headlamp beam pointed at nothing useful, and his body hung partly in shadow. From above, it still looked like a normal hang after a slip. So Eric did what made sense. Pull him up. They started hauling the rope, and that made it worse. Because as they pulled, Daniel's body rose slightly, but the helmet remained snagged for a fraction of a second longer. That fraction tightened the strap. The rear adjustment ring pressed into his throat. His airway narrowed, and his body, unconscious, couldn't shift to relieve it. That's the part people don't understand. If you're awake, you fight, you twist, you claw at straps, you find air. If you're unconscious, you don't. Unconsciousness turns equipment problems into fatal problems. Hanging there, Daniel was losing heat fast. Blood pooled toward his head. His breathing, if it existed at all, was restricted. And above him, everyone was trapped in the worst kind of confusion. They couldn't see the real problem, so they kept solving the wrong one. Maya moved in. "I'm going down," she said. "In an ice cave, you don't rush a descent. You don't jump into a rescue, because one mistake makes two victims." Maya clipped into the rope and started rappelling carefully. Ice screws had to be repositioned. Anchors had to be trusted, and inside the cave, radio signal was weak. Ice and geometry turned communication into broken fragments. As she dropped, she rotated to get eyes on Daniel, and then she saw it. Not the harness, not the rope, the helmet. The rear adjustment ring was hooked on the ice screw like a snagged seatbelt, and the chin strap was pulled so tight it wasn't just keeping the helmet on, it was crushing his airway. Maya's voice snapped upward, suddenly sharp. "Stop pulling, he's caught!" Everyone froze, because in that moment they understood something terrifying. They'd been pulling on the line while he was being strangled by his own gear. Maya tried to unhook the helmet, but cold makes plastic rigid and ice unforgiving. The helmet was jammed against metal, under tension. She tried again, hands shaking, gloves clumsy. Then she made the hard choice. She cut the position line holding his body in the killing angle, just enough to release pressure. Daniel dropped a short distance, controlled by the harness and remaining attachments. The helmet came free. Maya grabbed him, stabilized him, checked his face, checked for breath, and she already knew. No response, no breath, no fight left. The cave was silent except for small clicks of gear against ice. By the time a rescue team could reach that chamber, the outcome had already been decided. Because ice doesn't care that this was a tour. Ice doesn't care that nobody meant harm. Afterward, people asked the usual questions. Was the cave unstable? Was it a freak accident? And that's the uncomfortable truth. It wasn't freakish. It was normal. chain of small, reasonable decisions, ending in a completely preventable death. Here's what actually failed. 1. The crampons were wrong for ice cave movement. Those long front points were designed for consistent glacier angles. In layered, uneven ice, they can catch instead of bite, creating sideways falls, the worst kind. They had traction, but not the right kind of traction. 2. The helmet wasn't just old, it had exposed geometry. The protruding rear adjustment cradle created a snag point. In an environment full of anchors, ice screws, carabiners, fixed lines, snag points are hazards. Modern helmets reduce that risk. Old ones don't. 3. The rope delayed correct diagnosis. The rope made the situation look stable while he was actively dying. If you can't see the person, you cannot assume hanging equals safe. A suspended body isn't a solved problem, it's a timer. And that brings us to the moral. Simple but real. Nothing about this expedition was reckless until it mattered. Extreme environments don't forgive almost correct gear. And ice caves aren't rock caves made of ice. They are something else entirely.